If your husband looked at your sister like that, would you act, or would you wait until betrayal hit you like a storm? In the middle of a baby shower, with the whole family watching. Subscribe now for more chilling true stories of love gone wrong. When Melissa James walked into my office, she carried herself with a kind of quiet precision, the kind I'd seen before. Women who didn't want to be here, who didn't want their marriage to end, but had no other choice. Her nails were clean, filed square, her hair was tied in a practical bun. Her face looked younger than 34, but her eyes were decades older. She placed the manila folder on my desk like it contained medical results rather than a marriage's demise. "I need help," she said. Her voice didn't shake, but her fingers twitched once, then stopped. Melissa was a dental clinic manager in Scottsdale. She'd been with Brad for 10 years, married for 8, with a daughter, Lily, who was 7. She talked about her life like someone describing a well-maintained house. Solid structure, clean lines, no pests, but you could feel the termites chewing underneath. Her sister Jenna had always been close, only 2 years younger. They'd grown up sharing clothes, fighting over bedrooms, and covering for each other when they snuck out to high school parties. Now, Jenna was 6 months pregnant, single, and still clinging to that wild streak Melissa had long outgrown. The beginning of the end, Melissa told me, was a photograph. It was taken at Jenna's baby shower, an event Melissa had painstakingly planned. She'd picked out the pastel theme, baked cupcakes shaped like rattles, and even ordered a professional photographer. Everything had gone smoothly, too smoothly, perhaps. But when Melissa looked through the pictures later that night, something shifted. There it was, a candid photo. Jenna laughing at something out of frame. Brad standing behind her, his face turned slightly. It should have been nothing. But Melissa saw it. That look, not the look of a brother-in-law or a man being polite at a family event. It was something else, intimate, intentional. She zoomed in. His eyes were focused solely on Jenna. The corners of his mouth not smiling, no, but soft. He wasn't watching the party. He was watching her. Melissa closed the photo app and told herself she was being ridiculous. She reopened it anyway. She looked again. She stared for 20 minutes. The next day, she noticed how often Brad texted Jenna. "Oh, we're talking about the party stuff." He'd say, "She's hormonal and anxious." But the texts didn't stop after the party. If anything, they became more frequent. One night, lying in bed beside Brad's sleeping body, Melissa opened his phone. The passcode hadn't changed. There was nothing incriminating in the texts. But one stuck out. Koe Kong Giing Go Gi Chu. Melissa's Vietnamese was rusty, but she recognized the phrasing. She doesn't suspect anything, does she? The sender was a random contact name. One she didn't recognize. The number wasn't saved. The message wasn't long, but it stabbed her in the chest. She didn't sleep that night. Melissa didn't scream or confront him. She folded into herself. She made Lily's lunch the next morning. As usual, she kissed Brad on the cheek before he left. But something inside her had cracked. From then on, she noticed everything. Brad and Jenna laughing too long over a joke that only the two of them understood. Jenna arriving early for family dinners. Staying late to help clean when Melissa asked her not to bother. Brad scent, a cologne he hadn't worn in years, lingering faintly on Jenna's scarf one day when Melissa hugged her. It was all nothing. It was all everything. She didn't want to think it. This was her husband. This was her sister. This wasn't some trashy TV drama. But her instincts screamed louder each day. And the more she tried to suppress them, the more they fought back. Brad had always been a steady man. Predictable, kind, not particularly romantic, but dependable. Their intimacy had faded in the way most long marriages do, replaced by routine and obligation. But there were no fights, no infidelities, no great betrayals, until now. Or maybe they had always been there, and she had refused to see. Melissa began to withdraw. Her voice at work was sharp when it used to be calm. She caught herself zoning out during procedures, her hands trembling slightly when sterilizing tools. Her coworkers noticed. But no one said anything. At home, she became an actress. Dinner conversations with Lily turned into therapy sessions disguised as fairy tales. Brad, oblivious, or pretending to be, would scroll through his phone, smile occasionally, and then retreat to the den. One evening, Lily asked, "Why does Daddy text Aunt Jenna more than he talks to you?" Melissa blinked. "What do you mean, honey? She's always on his phone, even when you're both watching movies." Melissa nodded slowly. "That's interesting." She didn't cry. She hadn't cried yet, but she felt something deep inside loosen, like a knot unraveling slowly. That night, she stared at Brad as he slept, wondering if he dreamt of Jenna, if he compared them, if he had ever looked at her, Melissa, the way he looked at Jenna in that one photograph. She remembered their wedding day. Brad had been nervous, his hands clammy in hers. But his eyes had shone with something real. She had believed, with her whole soul, that they would last. Had Jenna been watching from the crowd that day? Had she imagined herself in Melissa's place? The paranoia poisoned everything, every interaction, every word. Jenna brought over maternity clothes one afternoon, talking about baby names. Melissa watched her belly move under the fabric, feeling both guilt and nausea. Her sister's life was growing while hers was decaying. When Jenna left, Melissa found herself sniffing the air, looking for Brad's cologne. She told herself it was nothing. And yet, at night, her thoughts twisted like vines. She imagined scenarios, catching them together, screaming at Jenna, Brad admitting it all. She imagined divorcing him, cutting Jenna out forever. She imagined forgiving them both and pretending none of it happened. But she didn't act, not yet. She waited, and watched. And inside her, something cold began to take shape. The certainty that the world she thought she lived in no longer existed. That her family, the one she worked so hard to build, was not just cracking, but already broken. It was only a matter of time before the truth emerged. And she was finally ready to look it in the eye. The baby shower was warm, filled with the scent of sugared pastries and pastel decorations that Melissa had chosen herself. She had made sure everything was perfect. Jenna deserved something beautiful. She thought, pregnancy hadn't been easy for her sister, and Melissa had taken it upon herself to bring joy into the final stretch. The James family gathered at their parents' house, a modest home with a white picket fence and a backyard trimmed neatly for the event. Streamers, balloons, and soft acoustic music blended into the comforting hum of family chatter. It was the kind of day Melissa would have once captured in her heart as a victory for closeness and tradition. She moved through the crowd like a hostess and a sister and a photographer all in one. With her phone in hand, she took candid shots, Jenna unwrapping a baby blanket, their mother wiping away a happy tear, Brad laughing with Melissa's father over a glass of iced tea. Everything looked the way it was supposed to. Perfect, ordinary, loving. And then she took that photo. Jenna was mid-laugh, cheeks flushed, eyes squinting from a joke someone had just told. Behind her stood Brad, not posing, not even aware, perhaps, that he was being captured in the frame. But his face, his eyes, they weren't laughing. He was looking at Jenna. No, he was watching her. It was a gaze Melissa hadn't seen from her husband in years. Not for her, not for anyone. It was soft, fixed, too long to be accidental. 1,000 unsaid things rested in that expression. Not admiration, not pride, something else, something deeper, something dangerous. Later that night, when she reviewed the photos alone in bed, she stopped at that frame and stared. She zoomed in, she zoomed out, she tilted the phone left and right, as though some hidden truth might reveal itself if she caught it from the right angle. A laugh escaped her, dry, bitter. Then she scrolled to the next photo, pretending it hadn't shaken her, but she came back to it, again, and again, until she felt something in her chest loosen like a frayed seam coming undone. Sleep didn't come. Instead, memories did. Brad and Jenna at a 4th of July barbecue last year. Heads leaned together in hushed conversation. Brad handing Jenna a drink before anyone else. Jenna placing her hand on Brad's shoulder and letting it linger half a second too long. Melissa hadn't noticed, or had she? She remembered thinking it was nice. The way they got along. She had told herself, even felt a bit lucky, that her husband and sister were close. It was better than the opposite. Now she wondered how long she had been smiling at her own undoing. In the kitchen the next morning, Melissa held up her phone, showing Brad the photo. "You were looking at her kind of strangely," she said, keeping her voice casual. Brad looked, then chuckled. "It's a photo, Mel." I probably blinked. "You weren't blinking, you were watching her." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you jealous of Jenna?" "No, I'm just saying it looked off." Brad kissed her forehead and walked away. "You've been watching too many soap operas." That night, Melissa brought it up to Jenna. They were sitting on the couch in Jenna's apartment, folding baby clothes. Melissa had waited until the right moment, or at least what she thought was the right moment. "Brad seems different around you lately," she said carefully. Jenna looked up from a onesie. Her brow furrowed. "Different how?" "I don't know, just more attentive. Maybe I'm being silly." Jenna's smile was quick, practiced. "You are. He's just being nice. I mean, I'm huge and hormonal, and you know Brad, he feels obligated to keep the peace." "Right," Melissa said, but Jenna's voice had been too quick, her tone too bright. Her eyes didn't hold steady. She folded faster, as though to escape the conversation through motion. That night, Melissa couldn't help but remember the way Jenna had once hidden her cigarettes at 15. The way her voice rose just a touch too high when she was lying. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself it had to be nothing. But she checked Brad's phone again a few days later. The same number as before. Still not saved. Another message. "I miss you. You're all I think about." No name. Just that. She didn't confront him. She didn't throw the phone. She simply walked into the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. What would it mean if she was right? What would it cost to be wrong? Every day after that was a balancing act between madness and denial. Brad seemed unchanged. He made dinner one night. Even bought her favorite red wine. Jenna called to chat about crib colors. Lily talked about school and bedtime stories. Melissa smiled, responded, laughed, but inside, she was screaming. She began watching them more carefully when they were together. Every interaction was a code she needed to break. Every touch, every glance, every shared laugh, an encrypted betrayal. Brad would open the door for Jenna. Jenna would bring him coffee. Brad would laugh too hard at her jokes. Jenna would brush imaginary lint off his sleeve. Melissa felt like a ghost haunting her own life. She tried to rationalize. Maybe she was hormonal, maybe it was stress, maybe it was nothing, but her gut refused to silence. She started to test them in small ways. She'd walk into the room unexpectedly. She'd bring up old memories from their wedding day and watch Brad's face. She'd ask Jenna about her ex, about the baby's father, never named, and watch how quickly Jenna changed the subject. It became clear to her that something was off, deeply off. And then, one day, while sorting through a drawer in Brad's study, an excuse, really, to snoop, Melissa found a receipt from a boutique hotel in Glendale. Just a single night, paid in cash. The date matched the weekend Brad claimed he was at a work retreat. She took a photo of the receipt, folded it neatly, put it back exactly where she found it. She didn't confront him. Instead, she went to Lily's room that night and watched her daughter sleep. The small chest rising and falling. The soft, even breaths. The innocence. Melissa felt her chest tighten. She couldn't fall apart, not yet, not without proof, not until she was sure. And that certainty, that quiet resolve, was the most terrifying thing she'd ever felt. She was no longer questioning whether something had happened. She was preparing for when it would all come out, and the woman she would become when it did. It took Melissa 3 more days to make the call. She stared at the business card a colleague had once passed her as a joke. Back when office gossip revolved around cheating dentists and mistresses showing up for root canals. At the time, she had laughed. Now, the joke clung to the back of her throat like bile. The detective's name was Lauren Wexley. Private, discreet, Highly rated online. Melissa didn't tell anyone, not even her best friend. She felt like an imposter stepping into a noir film, but she needed to know. When they met, Lauren didn't ask many questions. She had the kind of stillness that made Melissa feel simultaneously seen and protected. Melissa handed over a photo of Brad, a recent schedule, and 2 addresses, home and work. 2 weeks. Melissa said, "I want details, photos, locations, and, if there's someone else, I want to see her." Lauren nodded. "You sure you're ready for that?" Melissa hesitated. Then, yes. The first report came 5 days later. Brad had driven to Glendale after work. Not unusual. He had a college friend who lived there. Melissa recalled vaguely, but Lauren had followed him to a boutique hotel. Mid-level, clean, discreet, paid in cash, alone, for 20 minutes. Then she arrived, a woman in a loose coat, hood up despite the Arizona heat, pregnant, heavily. Melissa's hands trembled as she held the photos. They were grainy, shot from across the street, but she recognized the curve of that belly, the way the woman clutched her back as she stepped out of the car. The familiar bag on her shoulder. Jenna's bag. Her first reaction wasn't rage. It was disbelief so dense it pressed on her lungs. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. She flipped through the rest of the images, as though expecting the next one to change the story. The last shot was the worst. Brad holding the hotel room door open with one hand, his other resting lightly, familiarly, on the small of Jenna's back. Melissa set the photos down and walked out onto the patio. She didn't cry. Her body refused to process the magnitude of betrayal. Her mind kept saying it couldn't be real. It had to be someone else. It had to be. She called Lauren. "Are you sure it's her?" "My sister." Lauren's pause was long, measured. "I ran a reverse plate check on the car. It's registered to Jenna Lee James." Melissa hung up. The following day, she combed through old texts and memories with surgical precision. She needed a scapegoat, anything to prove her suspicions were misfired. And then she remembered Angela, Brad's former co-worker. He used to have lunch with her often, back when he worked out in Mesa. Melissa still had Angela's number saved. She called. The woman picked up, confused. "No, I haven't seen Brad in months." Angela said, "I moved to Colorado in January." "Why?" Melissa mumbled some excuse about old friends. Hung up. The line went dead, and with it, every last hope that this could be explained away. It wasn't Angela. It had never been Angela. It was Jenna, her sister, her best friend, the godmother of her child. That night, Melissa sat on the kitchen floor with the lights off. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. She remembered the way Jenna had cried when she found out she was pregnant. How Melissa had held her, told her it would be okay, that she wasn't alone. Was Brad there that day? Had he been the reason Jenna never named the father? She wanted to scream, to throw plates, to destroy everything in sight. But her body refused to move. Her rage curled in on itself, becoming something denser, sharper, focused. She was going to take everything from them. Every lie, every secret. She would burn their little fantasy to the ground. But not yet. She needed more, full confirmation, witnesses, maybe, a recording, something undeniable. Lauren delivered the second report a week later. Brad and Jenna had met twice more, once at the same hotel, once at a park in Tempe, where they sat on a bench under a tree and talked for over an hour. Lauren had used a directional mic. "I miss you," Jenna's voice had said, muffled but audible. "I hate sneaking around. You know we have no choice." Brad answered, "She suspects. She won't do anything. She never does." Melissa listened to the audio 3 times. The last line burned. "She never does." They thought she was weak, passive, a bystander in her own life. They were wrong. She printed every photo, backed up every file, bought a burner phone, sent copies to herself at work, disguised as patient documents. She began scripting what she would say, where she would say it, who would be there. She imagined the looks on their faces. She didn't feel guilty, not anymore. They had stolen from her, not just her marriage, but her sisterhood, her history, her sense of reality. She would reclaim it with the one weapon left to her, the truth. But she would deliver it at the perfect moment. And when she did, it would be unforgettable. Melissa set the table herself. Every plate aligned, every fork placed with clinical precision. Her mother had insisted on a family dinner before Jenna's due date. It was tradition, after all, a final gathering before everything changed. Melissa had nodded, agreed, smiled. She told him it was her turn to host. She would cook, she would decorate, she wanted it to feel special. Brad thought it was overkill. Why so formal? He asked, watching her arrange wine glasses. It's just dinner. Melissa smiled. It's family. The evening sun dipped low behind the James family house, washing the backyard in gold. Melissa wore soft pink, deliberate, understated, calm. Jenna arrived late, radiant in a cream maternity dress. Her face flushed with heat and something else, apprehension. Perhaps. Brad fetched her a glass of water before Melissa could offer. She watched his hand brush Jenna's as he passed it. She said nothing. The others came. Melissa's parents, her aunt and uncle, 2 cousins from Tucson. Laughter bounced between the walls. Warm and chaotic, Lily ran through the hallway in her socks, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Dinner was roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, Melissa's signature lemon tart. No one noticed her hands shaking as she carved the meat. No one noticed how often she looked at the clock. It wasn't until dessert was nearly served that Melissa stood. Forks clinked softly on plates. Her heart beat steady now, not with nerves, but with clarity. I have something to share, she said. Everyone turned. She reached into the sideboard drawer and pulled out a small black envelope. She laid it gently in the center of the table. Then another, then a flash drive. What's this? Her mother asked, the smile fading from her face. Melissa's voice was calm. Proof. Proof of what? Brad said. Melissa looked at him. Of betrayal. She clicked the remote in her hand, and the television behind them flickered on. A short video played. No sound at first, just an image. Brad's car pulling into the Glendale Hotel parking lot. Then Jenna's car, then the 2 of them meeting, embracing, entering the hotel together. Gasps rose like smoke. Melissa clicked again. Now the audio. I miss you. Jenna's voice, hushed and intimate. You know we have no choice. Brad. She suspects. She won't do anything. She never does. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Jenna stood abruptly, knocking over her glass. This is insane, she shouted. That's not me. That could be anyone. Then why is it your car? Melissa asked. Brad stood too. You went through my phone. You hired someone to spy on me. Melissa turned to him. No, I hired someone to protect my sanity. Her mother was crying now. Her father stared at the screen, unmoving. Melissa. Jenna sobbed. Please, I didn't mean to sleep with my husband. Melissa's voice cracked, but she held steady. Didn't mean to lie to me for over a year. Didn't mean to carry his child and sit across from me every week like nothing was wrong. Jenna covered her face. I was lonely. You always had everything. The house, the job, the perfect daughter. He made me feel important. Melissa snapped. Wanted? Brad slammed his hand against the table. You weren't exactly present. Melissa, you made this house a job interview. You stopped touching me. You stopped seeing me. Melissa's father stood. Enough. His voice was gravel and thunder. Everyone froze. He looked at Brad, then at Jenna. You are not family anymore, he said. You have shamed this house. Melissa's mother fainted. The chaos exploded. Chairs scraped. Voices rose. Lily cried. Melissa scooped her daughter into her arms, held her close, whispered that it was okay, even when it wasn't. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look back. She drove home that night and packed 2 suitcases. One for herself, one for Lily. She sent Brad a single text. You'll be served in the morning. At dawn, she filed for divorce. No theatrics, no apologies, just silence, and the first breath of a woman who had finally stopped doubting herself. The divorce was swift, at least on paper. The emotional wreckage, however, unfolded slowly, like smoke seeping under every door Melissa walked through. The court awarded her full custody of Lily. Brad's visitation was limited, 2 supervised weekends a month. No overnights. Melissa didn't fight for more. She didn't need to. Brad had buried himself with his own words and actions. And the judge, an older woman who barely raised her voice, seemed to understand exactly what had happened without needing the salacious details. Brad didn't contest. Not really. He tried to argue for shared custody at first. But after Melissa's lawyer submitted the surveillance footage and text transcripts, he lowered his head and stopped speaking. Melissa declined mediation. She refused Jenna's letters. Every olive branch felt like a knife wrapped in ribbon. Forgiveness was not in her vocabulary now. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Her mother was hospitalized 2 weeks after the hearing. The stress had taken its toll, hypertension. The doctors said, a minor cardiac episode, but it was enough to shake the family. Her father blamed both Jenna and Brad. Said so openly in the hospital room, his voice sharp as stone. Jenna didn't visit, or if she did, she came when Melissa wasn't there. No one spoke of her except in fragments. Her name became a smudge in the family vocabulary. Melissa's extended family, the cousins, the aunties who always forwarded Christmas cards, turned cold. Some blocked Jenna on social media. One cousin texted Melissa a single sentence, "You did the right thing." The scandal didn't remain private. The baby shower video hadn't leaked. But whispers spread through their community. Brad's firm dropped him from a major construction contract when the client, a family friend of Melissa's parents, heard the story. Melissa didn't revel in that. She just noted it, like cataloging the fall of a building she hadn't wanted to destroy, but had watched collapse anyway. The hardest part wasn't the silence or the judgment or the courtroom. It was Lily. "Why doesn't Daddy live with us anymore?" she asked one evening. Cuddled under a blanket on the couch. Melissa paused. Sometimes grown-ups hurt each other very badly. And when that happens, it's better for them to live apart. "Did he hurt you?" Melissa's voice caught. "Yes." "Did Aunt Jenna hurt you too?" She didn't know Lily remembered that much. "Yes, honey." Lily was quiet for a while. "Do I have to hate them?" "No," Melissa said softly, "but you don't have to love them the same way either." She relocated to Flagstaff a month later. A smaller house, less noise, new neighbors who didn't know her name, or her past. She found a position at a family dental practice. Part-time at first, then full as she got her rhythm back. Lily transferred schools. She made a new friend by the second week. Every night, Melissa tucked her in. Every morning, she made pancakes. She didn't cry often, only when the silence was too loud. Only when the guilt crept in. Not guilt for leaving, but for not seeing it sooner. For letting it fester so long. For allowing herself to be gaslit by 2 people she trusted with her entire soul. There were nights she woke up drenched in sweat, remembering the way Brad had held Jenna's elbow, the way Jenna had laughed during family dinners like everything was normal. Her dreams blurred time. Sometimes she saw Brad at their wedding. Then blinked and it was him holding Jenna's newborn instead. She never looked at the photo again, the one that had started it all. But she never deleted it either. It lived in a hidden folder on an encrypted drive, like a scar pressed between digital pages. One day, Lily came home with a school art project, a collage of family. Melissa smiled as she saw it, cutouts of Melissa, Lily, the dog they'd adopted from the shelter. There was no Brad, no Jenna, just a blank spot. Lily had filled it with a flower. Melissa kissed the top of her head and said nothing. There were moments of light, a walk through snow-covered pines. Laughter at bedtime stories, a stranger at the grocery store who said, "You have the calmest smile." But the shadows lingered, not as monsters, as memories. And Melissa had learned that not all memories deserve a grave. Some just need space. She sat one evening by the window, looking at an old framed photo, her, Brad, and Jenna, taken before Lily was born. Their eyes were bright, their smiles effortless. She held it a moment longer, then placed it face down in the drawer. Because in one photograph, you see a moment of love. In another, you see guilt. And sometimes, it's the same look in the eyes. Some betrayals come from strangers. Others come from the people who once shared your dinner table, your childhood, your vows. Melissa chose the truth, no matter how painful it was. But what if the truth isn't hiding in texts or photos? What if it's hiding inside your own car? In our next story, Jared from New Jersey thought someone had broken into his vehicle. What he found on the dashcam shattered his entire life. Subscribe to Infidelity Chronicles and turn on notifications, because what Jared discovers next will make you question what really happens behind the wheel.